Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to our read aloud of The Claverings by Anthony Trollope. We are rapidly approaching the end of this book, and that was signaled last time by the mother of all bombshells. The two of our main characters, Sir Hugh Clavering and his worthless brother Archie, have drowned at sea, off Heligoland, in a storm. No doubt about it, they didn't disappear, they were seen to die. Which means that Harry Clavering, our hero, his father, the rector of Clavering Rectory, is now the baronet. And Harry is suddenly his heir. The heir has the run of the estate. The heir has the run of the proceeds of the estate. The heir does not need to work at the Adelphi or anywhere else, and therefore the heir does not need to wait to marry. The heir is going to be a baronet. So that was the end of our last chapter, and that you might realize, you might come to realize at this point, these are just very few plot lines to wrap up, and we're going to deal with one of those today in chapter 45. This is She Mad?, where we will deal a little bit with Lady Ongar. We're not done with her with this chapter, but we'll deal a little bit more with her. Lady Ongar was at Tenby when she received Mrs. Clavering's letter and had not heard of the fate of her brother-in-law till the news reached her in that way. The news that Sir Hugh and Archie are dead. She has no love for either of them. She had gone down to a lodging at Tenby with no attendant but one maid, and was preparing herself for a great surrender of her property which she meditated. Hitherto she had heard nothing from the Countess or from the Courtons or their lawyer as to the offer she had made about Ongar Park, but the time had been short, and lawyer's work, as she knew, was never done in a hurry. She had gone to Tenby, flying in truth from the loneliness of London to the loneliness of the seashore, but expecting she knew not what comfort from the change. She would take with her no carriage, and there would, as she thought, be excitement even in that. She would take long walks by herself, she would read, nay, if possible, she would study, and bring herself to some habits of industry. Hitherto she had failed in everything, but now she would try if some mode of success might not be open to her. She would ascertain, too, on what smallest sum she could live respectably without penury, but would keep only so much out of Lord Ongar's wealth. Remember, she is determined not only to give Ongar Park back to the Courton family without charging them anything for it, but also to give them most of his money, so that she has enough to live on in comfort, but other than that, nothing. But hitherto her life at Tenby had not been successful. Solitary days were longer there even than they had been in London. People stared at her more, and though she did not own it to herself, she missed greatly the comforts of her London home. As for reading, I doubt whether she did much better by the seaside than she had done in the town. Men and women say that they will read and think so, those, I mean, who have acquired no habit of reading, believing the work to be of all works the easiest. It may be work, they think, but of all works it must be the easiest of achievement. Here Trollope is speaking right to us. He's going to go on, too, about the habit of reading, about book people, and how people who aren't book people think, oh, well, if I just had a little time, I'd read. As if it doesn't take practice. Given the absolute faculty of reading, in other words, basic literacy, the task of going through the pages of a book must be, of all tasks, the most certainly within the grasp of any man or woman who attempts it. Alas, no. If the habit be not there, of all tasks it is the most difficult. If a man have not acquired the habit of reading till he be old, he shall sooner in his old age learn to make shoes than learn the adequate use of a book. And worse again, under such circumstances, the making of shoes shall be more pleasant to him than the reading of a book. Let those who are not old, who are still young, ponder this well. Lady Ongar indeed was not old, by no means too old to clothe herself in new habits, but even she was old enough to find that the doing so was a matter of much difficulty. This is Trollope's very polite way of saying she's a nitwit. She had her books around her, but in spite of her books, she was sadly in want of some excitement when the letter from Clavering came to her relief. It was indeed a relief. Her brother-in-law was dead, and he who had lately been her suitor. These two men whom she had so lately seen in lusty health, proud of all the pride of outward life, had both, by a stroke of the winds, been turned into nothing. Okay, it wasn't by a stroke of the winds. It was by Trollope realizing that his money was almost out. A terrible retribution had fallen upon her enemy, and as for as her enemy she had ever regarded Hugh Clavering since her husband's death. She took no joy in this retribution. There was no feeling of triumph in her heart that he had perished. She did not tell herself that she was glad, either for her own sake or for her sister's. But mingled with the awe, she felt there was something of an unexpressed and inexpressible relief. Her present life was very grievous to her, and now had occurred that which would open her to new hopes and a new mode of living. Her brother-in-law had oppressed her by his very existence, and now he was gone. Had she had no brother-in-law who ought to have welcomed her, her return to England would not have been as terrible to her as it had been. Her sister would be now restored to her, and her solitude would probably be at an end. And then the very excitement occasioned by the news was salutary to her. She was, in truth, shocked. As she said to her maid, she felt it to be very dreadful, but nevertheless the day on which she received those tidings was less wearisome to her than any other days that she had passed at Denby. So just like everybody else, people are hearing this news and slowly realizing all the good things that it means and none of the bad things. The only person who hasn't felt that way is Hugh Clavering's wife. Everybody else has realized, oh, okay, so two worthless people are gone, and a whole bunch of good flows from that that's just been dammed up with them otherwise. Poor Archie. Some feeling of a tear, half formed, drop that was almost a tear, came to her eyes at the thought of his fate. How foolish he had always been, how unintelligent, how deficient in all those qualities which recommend men to women. But the very memory of his deficiencies created something like a tenderness in his favor. Hugh was disagreeable, nay, hateful, by the power of which he possessed, whereas Archie was not hateful at all, and was disagreeable simply because nature had been a niggard to him. And then he had professed himself to be her lover. There had not been much of this, for he had come, of course, for her money, but even then, even when that is the case, a woman feels something for the man who has offered to link his lot with hers. Of all these to whom the fate of the two brothers had hitherto been a matter of a moment, I think Lady Ongar felt more than any other the fate of poor Archie. No one's thinking of Archie. And how would it affect Harry Clavering? She had desired to give Harry all the good things in the world, thinking that they would become him well, thinking that they would become him very well as reaching him from her hand. Now he would have them all, but he would not have them from her. Now he would have them all, and would share them with Florence Burton. Ah, if she could have been true to him in those early days, in those days when she had feared his poverty, would it not have been well now for her also? She didn't marry him because he had no money. If this had happened then, she'd waited a little longer, but it was years. The measure of her retribution was come full to her at last, so it didn't take her long to get back to self-pity. Sir Harry Clavering. She tried the name and found that it sounded very well. And she thought of the figure of the man and his nature, and she knew that he would bear it with becoming manliness. Sir Harry Clavering would be somebody in his county, would be a husband of whom his wife would be proud as he went about among his tenants and gamekeepers, and perhaps on wider and better journeys, looking up the voters of his neighborhood. Yes, happy would be the wife of Sir Harry Clavering. He was a man who would delight in sharing his house, his hopes, his schemes, and his counsels with his wife. He would find a companion in his wife. He would do honor to his wife and make much of her. He would like to see her go bravely, and then, if children came, how tender he would be to them. Whether Harry could ever have become a good head to a poor household might be doubtful, but no man ever born fitter for the position that he was now called upon to fulfill. It was thus that Lady Ongar thought of Harry Clavering as she owned to herself the full measure of her just retribution had come home to her. Of course she would go at once to Clavering Park. She wrote to her sister saying so, and the next day she started. She started so quickly on her journey that she reached the house not many hours after her own letter. She was there when the rector started for London, and there when Mr. Fielding preached his sermon, and she did not see Mr. Clavering before he went, nor was she present to hear the eloquence of the younger clergyman. Till after that Sunday, the only member of the family she had seen was Mrs. Clavering, who spent some period of every day up at the great house. Mrs. Clavering had not hitherto seen Lady Ongar since her return, and was greatly astonished at the change which so short a time had made. "She is handsomer than ever she was," Mrs. Clavering said to the rector, "but it is that beauty which some women carry into middle life, and not the loveliness of youth." Lady Ongar's manner was cold and stately when she first met Mrs. Clavering. It was on the morning of her marriage when they had last met, when Julia Brabazon was resolving that she would look like a countess, and that to be a countess should be enough for her happiness. She could not but remember this now, and was unwilling at first to make confession of her failure by any meekness of conduct. It behooved her to be proud, at any rate till she should know how this new Lady Clavering would receive her. And then it was more than probable that this new Lady Clavering knew all that had taken place between her and Harry. It behooved her, therefore, to hold her head on high. And the reason why we're talking about this new Lady Clavering is because Mrs. Clavering is now Lady Clavering. Her husband is a baronet. He is Sir Clavering. But before the week was over, Mrs. Clavering, for we will still call her so, had broken Lady Ongar's spirit by her kindness. And the poor woman who had so much to bear had brought herself to speak of the weight of her burden. Julia had on one occasion called her Lady Clavering, and for the moment this had been allowed to pass without observation. The widowed lady was then present, and no notice of the name was possible. But soon afterwards Mrs. Clavering made her little request on the subject. "I do not quite know what the custom may be," she said, "but do not call me that just yet. It will only be reminding Hermie of her bereavement." "Well, she's always thinking of her bereavement," said Julia. "No doubt she is, but still the name would wound her. And indeed, it perplexes me also. Let it come by and by when we are more settled." Lady Ongar had truly said that her sister was as yet always thinking of her bereavement. To her now it was as though the husband she had lost had been a paragon among men. She could only remember of him his manliness, his power, a dignity of presence which he possessed, and the fact that he had been to her everything. She thought of that last and vain caution which she had given him when he had hardly permitted the last embrace that she had besought him to take care of himself. She did not remember how coldly that embrace had been received, how completely those words had been taken as meaning nothing, how he had left her not only without a sign of affection, but without any attempt to repress the evidence of his indifference. But she did remember that she had had her arm on his shoulder, and tried to think of that embrace as though it had been sweet to her. She did remember how she had stood at the window, listening to the sounds of the wheels which took him off, and watching his form as long as her eye could rest upon it. Ah, what falsehoods she told herself now of her love to him and of his goodness to her, pious falsehoods which surely tend to bring some comfort to her wounded spirit. She obviously isn't remembering what an absolute monster he was on the death of his son. But her sister could hardly bear to hear the praises of Sir Hugh. When she found how it was to be, she resolved that she would bear them, and not contradict them, but her struggle in doing so was great, and almost too much for her. "He had judged me and condemned me," she said at last, "and therefore, as a matter of course, we were not such friends as when last we met when we used to be before my marriage." "But, Julia, there was much for which you owed him gratitude." "We will say nothing about that now, Hermie. I do not know why your mouth should be so closed on a subject because he was gone. I should have thought that you would be glad to acknowledge his kindness to you, but you always were hard." "Perhaps I am hard. And twice he asked you to come here since you returned, but you would not come." "I have come now, Hermie, and when I thought I might be of some use. He felt it when you would not come before. I know he did." Lady Ongar could not but think of the way in which he had manifested his feelings on the occasion of his visit to Bolton Street. "I never could understand why you were so bitter." "I think, dear, we had better not discuss that. I have always had much to bear, I as well as you. What you have borne has come in no wise from your own fault." "No, indeed. I did not want him to go. I would have given anything to keep him at home." Her sister had not been thinking of the suffering which had come to her from the loss of her husband, but of her former miseries. This, however, she did not explain. "No," Lady Ongar continued to say, "you have nothing from which to blame yourself, whereas I have much, indeed everything. If we are to remain together, as I hope we may, it would be better for us that bygones should be bygones." "Do you mean that I am never to speak of Hugh?" "No, I by no means intend that. But I would rather that you should not refer to his feelings towards me. I think he did not quite understand the sort of life that I led while my husband was alive, and that he judged me amiss. Therefore I would have bygones be bygones." 3 or 4 days after this, when the question of leaving Clavering Park was being mooted, the elder sister started a difficulty as to money matters. Hermione has a very small settlement from her husband, relatively speaking, £800 a year. A Trollope's word would be niggardly. We don't use that word anymore, but still, it's a small. He could have given her 5 times that much, left that to her, and he didn't. Whereas her sister Julia is enormously wealthy. As an offer had been made to her by Mrs. Clavering to remain at the great house, but this she had declined, alleging that the place would be distasteful to her after her husband's death. She, poor soul, did not allege that it had been made distasteful to her forever by the solitude which she had endured there during her husband's lifetime. She would go away somewhere and live as best she might on her jointure, which is the money that she's been left. It was not very much, but it would be sufficient. She did not see, she said, how she could live with her sister, because she did not wish to be dependent. Julia, of course, would live in a style to which she could make no pretense. It's a gap in money, is what they're talking about here. Mrs. Clavering, who was present, as was also Lady Ongar, declared that she saw no difficulty. Sisters together, she said, need hardly think of the difference in such matters. Then it was that Lady Ongar first spoke to either of them of her half-formed resolution about her own money. And then, too, for the first time did she come down altogether from that high horse on which she had been, as it were, compelled to mount herself while in Mrs. Clavering's presence. I think I must explain, said she, something of what I mean to do. About my money, that is. I do not think that there will be much difference between me and Hermie in that respect. Well, that is nonsense, said her sister fretfully. There will be a difference in income, certainly, said Mrs. Clavering, but I do not see that that need create any uncomfortable feeling. One does not like to be dependent, said Hermione. You shall not be asked to give up any of your independence, said Julia, with a smile, a melancholy smile that gave but little sign of the pleasantness within. Then, of a sudden, her face became stern and hard. The fact is, she said, I do not intend to keep Lord Ongar's money. Not to keep your income, said Hermione. No, I would give it back to them, or at least the greater part of it. Why should I keep it? It is your own, said Mrs. Clavering. Yes, legally it is my own, I know that, and when there was some question whether or not it should be disputed, I have fought for it to the last shilling. Somebody, I suppose it was the lawyer, wanted to keep from me the place in Surrey. I told them that I did not abandon my right to an inch of it, but they yielded, and now I have given them back the house. You've given it back? Said her sister. Yes, I've said they may have it. It is no use to me. I hate the place. You have been very generous, said Mrs. Clavering. But it will not affect your income, said Hermione. No, that would not affect my income. Then she paused, not knowing how to go on with the story of her purpose. If I may say so, Lady Ongar, said Mrs. Clavering, I would not, if I were you, take any steps of so important a matter without advice. Who is there to advise me? Of course, the lawyer tells me that I ought to keep it all. It is his business to give such advice as that. But what does he know of what I feel? How can he understand me? How indeed can I expect that anyone shall understand me? But it is possible that people should misunderstand you, said Mrs. Clavering. Exactly. That is just what he says, the lawyer meaning. But, Mrs. Clavering, I care nothing for that. I care nothing what anybody thinks of me. What is it to me what they say? I should have thought it was everything, said the sister. No, it is nothing. Nothing at all. Then she was silent again, and was unable to express herself. She could not bring herself to declare in words that self-condemnation of her conduct which was now weighing so heavily upon her. It was not that she wished to keep back her own feelings, either from her sister or Mrs. Clavering, but that the words to express were wanting to her. And have they accepted the house? Mrs. Clavering asked. They must accept it. What else can they do? They cannot make me call it mine if I do not choose. If I refuse to take the income which Mr. Corton's lawyer pays into my bankers, they cannot compel me to have it. But you are not going to give up that too, said her sister. I am. I will not have his money. No more than will keep me from being a scandal to his family. I will not have it. It is a curse to me and has been from the first. What right have I to all that money because... She could not finish her sentence, but turned away from them and walked by herself to the window. Lady Clavering looked at Mrs. Clavering as though she thought that her sister was mad. Do you understand her? Said Lady Clavering in a whisper. I think I do, said the other. I think I know what is passing in her mind. Then she followed Lady Ongar across the room, and taking her gently by the arm, tried to comfort her and to argue with her as to the rashness of that which she proposed to do. She endeavored to explain to the poor woman how it was that she should at this moment be wretched and anxious to do that which, if done, would put it out of her power afterwards to make herself useful in the world. It shocked the prudence of Mrs. Clavering, this idea of abandoning money, the possession of which was questioned by no one. "They do not want it, Lady Ongar." "That has nothing to do with it," answered the other. "And nobody has any suspicion but that it was honorably and fairly your own." "But does anybody ever think how I got it?" asked Lady Ongar, turning sharply round upon Mrs. Clavering. Do you dare to tell me what you think of the way in which it became mine? Could you bear it if I had become yours in such a fashion? I cannot bear it, and I will not." She was now speaking with so much violence that her sister was awed into silence, and Mrs. Clavering found herself a difficulty in answering her. "Whatever may have been the past," said she, "the question now is how to do best for the future." "I had hoped," continued Lady Ongar, without noticing what was said to her, "I had hoped to make everything straight by giving his money to another. You know whom I mean, as so does Hermy. I thought, when I returned, that bad as I had been, I might still do some good in the world. But it is as they tell us in sermons, one cannot make good come out of evil. I have done evil, and nothing but evil has come from the evil which I have done. Nothing but evil will come of it. As far as being useful in the world, I know of what use I am. When women hear how wretched I have been, they will be unwilling to sell themselves, as I did." Then she made her way to the door and left the room, going on with quiet steps and closing the lock behind her without a sound. "I did not know that she was such as that," said Mrs. Clavering. "Nor did I. She's never spoken in that way before." "Poor soul! Hermione, you see there are those in the world whose suffering are worse than your own." "I don't know," said Lady Clavering. "She never lost what I have lost. Never. She has lost what I am sure you will never lose, her own self-esteem. But Hermy, you should be good to her. We must all be good to her. Will it not be better that you should stay with us for a while, both of you?" "What, here at the park? We'll make room for you at the rectory if you'd like it." "Oh, no, I will go away. I shall be better away. I suppose she will not like that often. She will not be like that often, will she?" She was much moved just now. "And what does she mean about her income? She cannot be in earnest." "Well, she is in earnest now." "And cannot it be prevented? Only think, if after all she were to give up her jointure. Mrs. Clavering, do you not think that she is mad? You don't think she's mad, do you?" Mrs. Clavering said that she could what she could to comfort the elder and weaker sister on this subject, explaining to her that the Courtons would not be at all likely to take advantage of any wild generosity on the part of Lady Ongar, and then she walked home across the park, meditating on the character of the two sisters. So once again, Mrs. Clavering now joins the huge chorus of people who are telling Julia Ongar, "Will you just cool your jets? Will you just let one day follow another for half a year? Instead of making all these rash decisions now, just wait. Just wait until your widowhood is over, and then see what you think. Instead of making rash decisions now." And it doesn't look like it's working. But there we have a little domestic scene that has not wrapped things up with Julia Ongar, but we will move on from there. We are only a couple of chapters from the end. So I'll wrap this up for now, and I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.